Okay, everybody, it's getting about that point in time. We're going to get started again. We're just going to do some little fun stuff, etc. I put into the download area a brand new handout. As a matter of fact, I spent the weekend writing this up for you. It doesn't have all my fancy little screenshots and stuff, but it's a good start at least. You know, I'm always trying to do something new for the classes and whatnot. So feel free to download that. Give me your honest feedback. See what you want changed or wasn't really clear. Will always be kind of handy. So it's 8:45, so let's go ahead and everyone give me a here, presence, yes, yo, whatever into the chat real fast. And we'll get going real shortly. Okay, yeah, it looks like getting everybody here. Sounds good. Okay, one of the things I want to talk about just briefly, we talked briefly about shapes when we were way back at the beginning. We were talking about the shapes and masks, the different types of shapes here, where you can use either the pre-made shapes or use the pen tool to make whatever you want. Both of these are controlled then by the fill command, like no fill, stroke, type in whatever number you need, or controls, no stroke, etc. There's a lot of little things that you can do with this. Oops. And I already wanted to just make a simple line. Not simple, let's just start with a curvy line. There we go. So there's my line. Now, when we use the text, we know that we have an add button here, which allows us to add things. Okay, there we go. Add things to text, give us, and they call them animators. Some people refer to these as repeaters, even though there's only one that's actually called a repeater. Excuse me. Apologies. But basically, this allows us to make new things and even group some of the artwork together. As you can see, we can do all sorts of fun little things. But say, for example, you know, after I've got myself a little line here. So basically just going to open this up. I'm going to go in add. And I'm going to choose trim paths. Now this creates a special animation that we can do here, which allows me to, by playing with the start point and the end point, to create a section of the line. And like some of the animators with text, if you recall, we can set the start and end points. But then they have a thing called offset here, which allows us to move them. So I say here I've got set that to 25%. By moving the offset, I'm showing 25% of the line. Now what makes this different is if I were to just draw a line, put a effective stroke on it, I could do this exact same thing, except this thing allows me to do a repeat of the line. Let's set that to 0. So just like rotation, I can set the offset, go to the end, and say, hey, do that 5 times in 10 seconds. And it gives me the ability to create that, something like that. I can also, you know, then turn around and duplicate this. So I have the same animation, but I can then go in, play with the sizes, go back into the pen tool. Make a different one. back in there. Not the fill, not the stroke. Stroke, make a different color. And just plain chasing lines and stuff. Simple little thing, but it adds a little bit more interest. You can do a lot more fun things with that. But it just gives you an idea of doing something a little differently. Now, for example, I can also take this and let's do that circle thing you've been watching during the break, which is, you go in here, go ellipse, hold down the shift key, makes a nice little circle. Again, color doesn't matter and stuff. But animating this just doesn't, it doesn't take much to make something very interesting. So we'll go into contents, ellipse 1. And let's go ahead and choose size. Now, actually, on the second thought, let's do a stroke first. So we'll go up to, say, 2 seconds. This is one of those times we're going to do something backwards. And we're going to set the stroke width at this 5 pixels thick. We're going to back it up, about half a second, and set that to 0. So basically we're getting it to fade in. Which is one way of doing it. The other thing that we can do is do actually the opposite of that, where we're going to make this actually fade out. Where we go to stroke width, start at 0, go back a second. Whoops, set to 5 points. That's way too thick. So watch. It just fades out. We'll do that a little faster. So how do we make that then look like it's popping? Well, that's obviously what? Size. So we can go back into here to size. We'll set that to that size. Come back here, set it down to 0. So it's getting bigger, and then the scale, the stroke then gets thinner as it gets bigger. So it gives the illusion of popping. Now that's not all good and interesting, but what we can do with that then is obviously duplicate it several times. And obviously you want to back it up far enough so you can I want to randomize it. Open up the ellipse, stroke, deselect, choose this one, make that one color. Make that another color. Yeah, you can do the fade out thing on text as well. Content, whoops, stroke. Let's make this one green. Be very helpful. And the last one, stroke. Color, how about a purple? Oh, careful. when moving them, of course. Now you sit there and go, okay, they're all being timed, so we can slide them around, have them happening at different times. Take that, pre-comp it, which is fine. Again, we'll move the play needle back, and we'll hit duplicate several times. These guys over here, so that's the first one. We'll hit scale on that one. We'll also hit rotate. Go down to the next one. Again, scale it up a little bit. Rotate. How about flip it over, 180. Reposition it. Actually, that one we really want to scale up even more. There we go. Next one. Put it in a different place. 90 degrees. Next one. Look for places to fill in. Final one, obviously we don't want overlapping. Pre-comp that again. Call it circle 2. Rotate that one 90 degrees. Rotate that one minus 90 degrees. You get the idea. Also scale that one way up. Now all of a sudden, from all one circle. Yes, I turned off the fill color in answer to that question. Yes, you know, it's just a simple little thing, but you can see how much mileage I'm giving out of one circle. I spent more time on the one that you guys saw demoed earlier and stuff. But it gives you an idea of, you know, how much fun you can have with these sort of things. Taking one simple thing, just, you know, we could also just spread out the time of these things. So it's kind of a crazy little extra thing to do. All right, let's take this a step further. Once again, using the pin tool. Now I'm going to do a thing with called repeating lines. So we're going to have no fill. We're going to have a stroke about, now let's make that 3. And I'm going to turn on my guide, and I'm going to make a line dead center. One anchor point, hold down my shift key. That's because that's the plus tool, that's not the pin, the straight pin tool. There we go. Now that doesn't look super impressive. It's just a regular old everyday line. That's okay. Let's play with it though. So what we want to do is open up the shape layer, go into content, and what we want to do is actually choose this time the repeater. Repeater will literally do what it says. It repeats whatever shape it is. By default, the repeater repeats 3 copies. I could increase that and have more of them, etc. As a matter of fact, let's do 10 copies. Okay, so what we're going to do then is down here, zoom in. You'll notice that we have a transform for this repeater. Do not get that confused with the transform for the layer. Okay, big difference. So, just one thing to be aware of. So from this, because the transform repeater is only going to change this information. It's not going to change anything else on this layer. So from here, we want to actually change the rotation. And let's try what 20% will do. Maybe a little bit more. You can see how it's rotating the copies. E. Okay. So what we want to do is actually, before we do that, is we're going to go, we made 10 copies of this. We're going to go into position. Notice that they're 100 pixels apart from each other. We're actually going to set this to 0, 0. So right now, 10 copies are sitting on top of each other. Why this is important is we're going to go in here to rotation, and if they're rotating right on top of each other, we get this. Now your mileage may vary depending upon the size of your line. So, 37, like so. Now, so that gives us a little starburst. Not too shabby. And I don't think I drew my line very straight, but that's life. Now watch what happens here. I can go into the anchor point and have them come apart from each other. Now the problem with that, of course, is the anchor point is not in the center, therefore it doesn't look like a true burst. They're coming out from the first one. However, I could go into the Y here and change it here, but that would cause me other problems. There's an alternate tool. So if I go Layer, Transform, Center Anchor Point in the center of the layer. By clicking on this, it now moves that. It's the same thing as grabbing the Pan Behind tool and manually moving it. Now if I do the anchor point again, excuse me, now if I do the anchor point, position changing. This is one of those times where you really want to start playing with these little numbers, okay? Because it's a lot of fun to just do this. So obviously if we wanted to, we could make this spin by spinning the entire layer, because we know it's dead center. So let's see what that looks like keyframed. Start at 0, 0, 0. Let's do 5 seconds. 3 times around. There's the spokes of your bicycle going around and around and around. Now if we want to do something else, I'm going to kill those keyframes. Notice if I use scale for the layer, I can actually make a little explosion. So for example, if I were to do similar to what I just did with the little popping bubbles, I could decide how big I want this to start with. So right about there. So we'll say 2 seconds. Scale it. Move it back. 1 second. We can drop that down to 0. However, we could also then go back, rather than a repeater, go back up to the shape, go to the stroke, and we could play with the stroke width, or we could play with the opacity even, but let's go ahead and set the stroke width there. And now I can hit the letter U so I can see how close these things are. Come out here, and then shrink that down to the width to 0. So now I get a animation. And then I can just play with the how often I get to do this sort of thing. There we go. Little burst. And just like before, duplicate it a few times. Do not use the pan behind tool. Stagger the timing just a touch. Stroke. Change that to a red one, just for the hay of it. And there you go. Got yourself a nice little starburst. So basically the tricky part of that, of course, was from the beginning. Make ourselves a new one. Started with a pin, just made a simple line. And because last one I did was red, that's where you go. Then from there, I opened it up and added in the repeater, which of course made 3 copies. And I changed it to 10. I could make more or less, whatever you wanted to do. Then under the repeater, the transform shape, I basically, their position, it was good again. There's the repeater. Transform shape. There we go. Where the repeater is in the stack, the layer really is important. So I need to have the line first, then it says repeat that the 10 times, and then I can get in there. And then we go under transform with repeater, put them on top of each other, 0, 0. And then we do a rotation on the same anchor point. That's not too bad. At which point we can play with the scale. Now if I play with the scale not of the layer but of the repeater itself, that gives me a different look altogether. That's why it's so fun to play with this, because you always get new looks and feels every time you try these things. But if I were to play with the transform scale with this, lots of little fun little things. You know, obviously in class I'd have you all goofing off trying different things with this. I'm sort of racing ahead here without asking any questions. If you guys have any questions so far. Fun little shapes, huh? You want to upscale this a little bit and try something a little fancier? Sure you do. I heard you all say that. Sure. I love the enthusiasm. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. Okay. For this one, we're actually going to start with an empty thing, because you don't need to use the circle or the pen tool. You can also go to layer, because under layer, you can go down here and you can see where it says new shape layer. This allows you to add these as well. It's not as well known, but there it is. So by adding a shape layer, there is no shape in here yet. I've made the layer, but there is no shape. So from here, I can hit the add button, and I'm going to go in, and let's choose an ellipse. And in my handout on the back side, I have this, and there's an order in which to add these to make sure that each thing falls in place. So I'm going to add the ellipse. I'm going to add a stroke. I'm going to add a fill as well. Voila. So from here, my size of my ellipses, I'm going to actually make it 300 by 300. Pretty big. I can make this any color I want. I'm going to increase the stroke, though, to something really big, 50. So it gives me a little banner-like shape there. Okay. And I'm going to rename that and call that circle. Now I could probably add what I'm about to do on more than one onto the exact same layer, but I like to actually separate these things out. So I'm going to go layer, new, again, shape layer. Open it up, hit add. I'm going to choose Polystar, which literally is a star. Then from here, I'm going to go ahead and add, again, a fill and a stroke. Now my fill, however, I definitely want to have a different color. I want that star to stand out. I could add another color to the stroke here, but I think maybe I will go ahead and do that. Yeah, a little gray. As opposed to another color, but it's different from white. So that's actually not too bad. Also, I'm going to, by the way, I can also go in and add more stars and stuff like that, but I'm good with a 5.1. And then under actual layer scale, I'm going to shrink this down just a hair. A little bit more, 50%. Okay, that's good. All right, then I'm going to come back up here to my Polystar path. Under position, I'm going to move this up to the top. So 150 pixels. Actually, that's not enough to do what I want it to do. Yeah, right about there. So from that, I'm going to make sure that I'm clicked on the content, and I'm going to add in a repeater like I just did with those lines. So I'm going to go repeater, which by default always gives me the 3 to let you know that you've really done it. Okay. So what I want to do, though, again, position is really important. So I want to put the repeater up. That's just below the Polystar. There we go. Transform. And I'm going to want to actually have $12 copies. Lots of copies there. And position, again, I'm going to put them on top of each other. Again, remember, right, this is the transform repeater, not the transform layer. So I am transforming that information just above me. Okay. Now I'm going to, see if I got this right. Under rotation, I'm going to actually, the one thing that I haven't, is a little known secret, is you can actually have it do math here. For example, what is the angle of this? Well, I have 12 copies, right? So if I were to type in 360 degrees, 60, slash 12, oops. Well, my stars are still too big, so I'm going to, but yeah, gives you an idea there. Now, if I, of course, play with the scale of the repeater, you'll notice that they curl in on themselves. I have I made them small enough to start with. So I should delete the repeater, scale these down even further. Let's go ahead and put that all the way up here at the top. There we go, that's what I really want. Put my anchor point in the center of the screen. I'm redoing the repeater because these were the star was too big. Now I can go repeater and say, hey, put that up above. There we go, got it. Copies, 12 copies. Transform repeater, position on top of each other. Now if I tell it rotating and let it do the math, 360 degrees divided by 12 stars, ta-da. Now of course I move my anchor point way down here. And now grab it, move it back up here. See if that makes a difference. There's some days where you try to do these things and they just don't want to do it. You know, I spent all weekend trying to get this to look so cool, and the idea being is I was going to animate and twirl around here. The idea being, and let's go ahead and just set that up. Wrong tool, pointer tool. Let's grab the wrong thing, but that's a fact. So the idea being, of course, was this. And I do the math, you can see that it's set there to 30 degrees to get a full circle. So if I start at 0, 0, 0, go out, say 5 seconds, and then do the 360 degrees divided by 12 stars, what happens is this. Which gives us a nice little animation there, I think. This is how they do those lottery type commercials and political speeches. And if we rotate the layer and play with the other regular settings, we can have all sorts of fun with that. So go ahead and take the handout, play with it. But I just wanted to let you know that these are new options for you to play with. I'm going to have to review my numbers here. Obviously they're a little bit off, but you get the idea. The idea that you can just go in, create new shapes, and go in, add different strokes, fills, gradients, play with the path, and there's all these other fun things that will allow you to play with them. So it gives you a different look and feel. Okay, any questions or anything? You guys still with me? You've been very, very quiet tonight. Okay, don't see you guys asking any questions. Still here. Oh, thank you. So glad. Anyhow, I will be grading your Travel Channel stuff later this week. I'll also finally grade all the late projects. My apologies for not getting to them, but I've been really swamped at my job this week. And we will remind you that next week I'll try to send out an email to remind you, but next week's Memorial Day, so we do not have class next week. We're skipping a week and then coming back on the June 1st. And then the week after that, we will be doing your final projects are due on the 8th, and then the final class itself will be on the 15th. Okay. Also, at the end of the semester, I will be asking you questions such as, how can I improve doing this online, things like that. I've been sort of making this up as I go. So think about, how I should change the class because I got to do this again for the fall. And have fun like that. So we're coming up at 9:30, everybody. I think that's probably enough variety between Tracker, this, and thinking of the final projects. Once again, I want to emphasize, feel free to reach out to me, send me an email, contact me if you have problems or questions about the final project. And we will, I'll do my best to answer them as quickly as possible. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. I keep doing that.